Now for our final group of the evening, group number 4, they're going to bring us up to speed on some more recent history of the state of Israel.
It sounded like you guys, we actually didn't have time to put a little dance together, so it might get a little less happy. There were some pretty serious issues, and we talked about them in detail. So we'll just give you the short, sweet. Sorry that we're not singing, but
it's probably a good thing that we're not singing.
Yeah, we're dancing.
I like singing.
Yeah,
the
not
first one in
issues.
order was the second Intifada, and there was the first one, which was less violent, or it was still very violent, but the second one was more. It basically started after a riot occurred. I forgot the name of the place, but Yasser Arafat had supplies and stuff ready, and that stemmed into multiple suicide bombings all over Israel. And it wasn't, everyone thinks of Israel as a violent place, or there have been violence in the past, lots of wars, and maybe you would say that Israel has tolerance for suicide bombings, but this was beyond. It was every day in cities everywhere, and people were. I got the feeling unnerved, and basically didn't know what to do. That's, I guess, the way. The start of it wasn't really. Didn't make sense. It was just a riot that started this, and in the end, I guess I'll leave it for Ben to explain how it ended.
So the IDF surrounded Yasser Arafat's house, and they held it for a couple days. He couldn't leave, and they finally made a deal, but didn't end it. It just kind of helped to lessen it. That's the second
Intifada. And it was 4 years in between the start and
Took
the
4
end.
years.
So next, Israel withdrew from the Gaza Strip, and this was in the summer of 2005, and Israel decided that to lessen the violence, Israel was going to remove most of the military force from the Gaza Strip, and the citizens as well. So when this happened, Israel was sort of acting on faith that this would lessen the violence at the time, and this happened.
So it happened, there was a lot of tension, obviously, when Israel decided to withdraw from the Gaza Strip, because, this is a land that, in the Bible, says belongs to Israel. The Gaza Strip belongs to Israel. So when the Israeli government is telling Israeli citizens and the military that they need to leave their homes that they built with their own hands and had lived in their whole lives, people obviously were not happy with this. So much so that the Israeli government had to forcibly remove the people that lived in the Gaza Strip from their homes, because, like Zach said, it was, an act of good faith, because the Palestinians suggested that if we gave them the Gaza Strip, things might calm down. That was the suggestion.
All right, next was Gilad Shalit. He was an 18-year-old member of the Army, and he was operating a tank with 2 other members, and their tank was, they hit a landmine, and so they were injured in it. He got metal shot into his arm, and then he was captured by 2 Palestinians. The one other member was alive and saw him, get captured and taken. They didn't really know. This was in 2006, so they didn't know if he was alive or not. And they weren't able to confirm until video was released 5 years later, so in 2011, showing that he was alive. And based upon Shelley's description, he was skinnier than a newspaper, is the way she described him. So clearly he had suffered, and no one knew where he was really taken or held captive, just because it was all kept, no one knew. Anyways, the Palestinians were demanding to trade 1,000 terrorists just for him. This was 6 years after he had been kidnapped. So there had been proposals to get him released before. The Israeli government had said no. They finally came around to trade 1,000 terrorists, Palestinian terrorists, for him. And Shelley and Tal and the whole Israeli community, there's been, they leave a chair out for him when they have events at their house. It's very emotional. And they have of strings around T-shirts. Clearly, the whole, all of Israel was affected by it. She's gonna talk a little more about the aftermath.
And I was just going to say that what was really important about the event, that it was just one soldier, and it affected really the entire country, that all the not only the soldiers, but the entire country was affected. And that what was important, that it was one soldier versus 1,000 terrorists. And it was a lot at stake, but it was really, really crucial to show the entire army, the entire community of Israel, that Israel was willing to do everything to show that they would bring this one soldier home safely, and so that all the soldiers felt, and all of Israel felt like they could have confidence in their country and their government, and they were supported by them.
And yeah, Tal was saying personally, he's in the army, and he just wants to know that the Israeli government would, if he was kidnapped, would do everything to make sure that he was released right away and wouldn't have to wait 6 years. So, and also, he's at home now. He's making progress. He missed 6 years of what was going on in the world. Just missed, current events. Michael Jackson came up as one, among others. So, but he's at home now. He's 26 years old, and he's taking the steps to recovery. He's not fully there.
Okay, so leading out of that, in the Gaza Strip, there were obviously Israeli troops, and then there were two guys, four guys riding around. There's two guys riding around in a Jeep, and that Jeep got bombed. And so but they didn't know if the two guys had actually been kidnapped or if they had been killed. It was just really unclear. But based on the coming off the hills, this was shortly after Gilad Shalit. It's really difficult to pronounce, actually. It was right on the heels of that, so we had to immediately retaliate and pretty strongly. And so we figured out that it was Hezbollah that did it, and so we ended up fighting with them. So it's called the Second Lebanese War, but it wasn't actually with the troops of Lebanon. Do you want to talk a little bit
Sure.
about why not?
So,
Or why it wasn't the troops of Lebanon?
the troops in Lebanon were a lot smaller than Hezbollah at the time. I think they were about half the size of Hezbollah. So, approximately. And Israel invaded Lebanon to fight with Hezbollah with 15,000 troops. After 30 days of fighting, there was no resolution. So, UN had a resolution for the Israeli troops to withdraw, and
Yeah, it turns out the two guys had actually been killed, but so we ended up trading their two bodies for two. We released two more terrorists, but we got their two bodies back, so they could be with their family.
Okay, so it's all coming together, why we're on Shorashim, why we chose this trip. And I'm sure for many of us, we came here to meet new people, to see all the amazing places, to be part of our homeland. But I think for a lot of us also, a big part of it is truly trying to understand all of the history as well as the current events that are going on in Israel. And then,
And being teachers, one of the beauties of being a teacher is you never stop learning, and these were our two great teachers in our group. We had no time to make any kind of performance because we wanted to learn so much from them. There's only so much you can learn from a textbook and the newspaper or world news, but getting the story personally from them made it so much more meaningful to us and really gave us a great perspective that we wouldn't have had otherwise if we didn't join this trip.
And also with the whole thing being teachers, it's so important to have a teacher and a facilitator to give opportunities for this. But I don't know if you guys remember when you were students, most of the time you truly learned best from your peers who you could relate to, who were going through similar experiences. And it's unbelievable, that we live thousands of miles apart, but yet we all feel this connection to each other. And I think that is what makes Shorashim so special from all the other groups, is we have the opportunity, an unbelievable opportunity, to travel with amazing Israelis and learn more from them in 10 days than we could probably learn in years from watching news, reading textbooks, like Mindy said. So thank you to all of you guys for taking the opportunity to teach us